This is the Fantasy Ladder Podcast, episode 47. I'm your host, Steve at Fantasy Ladder. We are now previewing the NFL Conference Championship matchups between the Philadelphia Eagles and the San Francisco 49ers and the Kansas City Chiefs and the Cincinnati Bengals. Today, we're going to be covering the Philadelphia Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs. That'll be part one. Part two will include, obviously, the 49ers and the Cincinnati Bengals. Just going to go over the schedule for the weekend. So just two games here, starting with the NFC Championship. San Fran obviously will be traveling into Philadelphia. Over under is set at 46 points, and Philadelphia is favored at this moment at 2.5. And then the Cincinnati Bengals, of course, will travel to Kansas City with a line with the over under at 47 points, and the line is now up to even. So it was set at 1.5 just as early as this morning. So a very fascinating movement there on the line, I guess. The notion of Patrick Mahomes feeling better with his ankle is very encouraging, obviously. So we will get to that in just a moment here as we bring on our guests. So we will start by bringing on our Kansas City Chiefs fan, his fourth appearance on the Fantasy Ladder podcast. We welcome back Axton. So, Axton, tell people where they can find you and what kind of content you had coming out for us this year and going into next year. Welcome on.
Hey, I appreciate you having me on. It's always a pleasure each and every time. I just love hopping on here and talking football with everybody. It's a blast last week, so I'm glad to be back. But everybody can find me on Twitter at Harding_3. I'm also all over the IDP guys website, not necessarily all over, but that's where you can also find most of my content. Videos and such is kind of what I dabbled into a little bit more this year, having had my son early on. That kind of took up a good chunk of my time, but I was able to carve out about an hour or so to do waiver wire show with Michael Sicoli, another IDP guys writer. So that was a blast this year, and I kind of plan to dabble a little bit into things here and there. So far my time doesn't allow for me to get too involved with too many articles and things like that just yet, but I'm not sure exactly what I'll be getting into this off season or going into next year, but I hope I can kind of do some of the same thing. I just kind of write what's on my mind.
No, I love it. No, it's very true. Definitely wrote a lot of articles, a lot of video content, not just with the waiver wire stuff, but with a lot of the rookie mock draft talk from last year. So we'll probably see you back there again. Very active in the IDP guys Discord. A big benefit of being a subscriber, and obviously very involved in the mock drafts that will set the ADP for the website. So of course, it's not just random players in a list. It's being chosen by people like you and me who are in those mock drafts fairly often. So I would agree, you are all over the website in a lot of ways. So there's a lot of ways to interact with the website. So Axton is definitely at the center of a lot of it. And welcome you back on, as I said. So can't wait to hear your thoughts regarding the Chiefs. But we will bring on our representative, our official rep of the Eagles. I am always the repping Eagles fan. We'll bring on a second one here just for the extra fun. So we have Jason. We welcome him back for his second appearance. You remember him back in the summer doing the Eagles team preview. So welcome back, Jason. And where can people find you and your content?
Hey, thanks for having me, Steve. It's good to see you again. It's always a pleasure to be on the pod. If me being on the preseason podcast can result in them entering the NFC Championship game, I'll look forward to joining you again in the offseason for next year's preview.
Absolutely. Yes.
If that's a great omen, then I'm happy to do it. You can never have too many Eagles fans. As you can see on my badge below there, you can find me at Spide78 on Twitter. I'm pretty active on there. For this previous season, I did a weekly column for Dynasty Nerds where I did starts and sits for quarterbacks on a weekly basis. So I was pretty pleased with how that turned out. Now that we're turning kind of the page into the at least fantasy off season, I'll be looking forward to some rookie profiles coming up in February and March. So that's always occupying my time as we turn the page on the calendar and head towards the draft. So I think that's where kind of all dynasty players' heads go to is rookie evaluation. So you'll see some content from me in that regard in the next couple months.
I love it. Yeah, it's always a very long winter of waiting for the combine, which is just a very sad bit of excitement. It's just guys running around in tight clothes, but still it's better than just the same old college highlights and game film. But we look forward to your content on Dynasty Nerd. So that's
Thank you.
fantastic. All right, so we're going to start with the Kansas City Chiefs. So, Axton, I would love to hear your reaction to the win. We can now have you react to a win now. Last week, you're just coming off the bye week, nice and cozy, but now the real stuff has happened. So please let me know your thoughts on how the game against the Jaguars went, what you liked, what you didn't like, basically your thoughts regarding that win.
Yeah, it was kind of a little bit of a whirlwind. We got comfortable, I think, there for a little bit, but kind of what I mentioned last week in that our defense just it held up enough for us to win in this game against maybe not quite a Super Bowl caliber offense. Definitely one with a lot of potential, one that's made a huge step forward in the 2022 season. Uh, But again, I mentioned on last week's show that the offense just needed to convert. We needed to convert first downs every drive. We needed to punt the least amount of times as possible. I think we had 4 last week, which I mean we could do better than that, far better, I would argue. But again, it just over the course of the game, we did it just enough to kind of pull this one off, in my opinion. But it wasn't anything flashy. Having Patrick go down with that ankle sprain kind of just adds a little bit of a wrench into it as well. But guys like Isaiah Pacheco has come out and really been a huge game changer for our offense. Clyde really hasn't been near consistent enough or just near the guy we drafted him to be. And Pacheco gave us a discount and gave us more than we could have ever even asked for. So, having 95 yards on 12 carries last week, he kind of helped us in our inconsistencies. And it just kind of adds to the uncertainty to as far as defenses go to prepare for the Chiefs. There's all these staple guys like Juju and Kelsey, and obviously Patrick is throwing to him, so you got to keep an eye out for these guys at all times, anyways. But just the Andy Reid making those good play decisions and just using his guys to their strengths at pristine condition, man. But it just goes to show how who are you going to guard? They got Kadarius Toney's out here. Marquez Valdes-Scantling can catch a big pass. We just got tons of athletes out there for Andy Reid to really go and just have fun with. Basically, I mean, they kind of make things happen for themselves. So I like what the offense is doing, but I think we need to convert a little bit more of those first downs in this coming week, and then we ought to be good. It's just we got to keep up with them. Our defense is going to be our downfall. They kind of stepped up a little bit to get us over that hurdle and keep us ahead. But we can't be letting the Cincinnati Bengals make the kind of plays that we allowed Jacksonville to make. We can't let those 16-yard pass after 16-yard pass go down the field because Jamar Chase is going to take a couple of those in the end zone. And T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, Hayden Hurst, they got all these weapons. We can't be letting a definite Super Bowl caliber team like the Bengals come out and kind of have their way with us. I think our defensive line really needs to step it up. I'm not saying they've done great all season long, but I think the key to helping our offense be able to stay either ahead or in this game is to really put the pressure on Joe Burrow. That's kind of what has worked for us all season long. When Karlaftis and Chris Jones can get back there and make quarterbacks sweat, it just seems to one extra punt more than our offense can really allow an offense like what we have to go down and convert one time and just jump out a little bit ahead. But it's just inconsistencies with that defense that's kind of been what has hurt us in our off games this season is just the lack of just pure consistency. We've got a young defensive back core, which I am dreading, not in the sense that we don't have great players, but I think for such a big weakness for the Kansas City Chiefs being ranked one of the dead last in about every category you could imagine. We're out here drafting rookies. I mean, first, I think our priority should have probably been getting a veteran. And then I think, in my opinion, the way to develop a rookie is to put him behind somebody who knows exactly what they're doing. You get somebody out there who's been in the league, who's a great defender, who can just basically lead us, for lack of better terms, a pack of rookies, a pack of some rookie defensive backs, and show them the ropes of the pros and how to be a good defensive back. I think that really helps your players a lot more, and I think it in the end pays off. And also, a veteran would provide more help now. Where guys like uh, Duffy and those guys back there in the secondary are still kind of developing into the players they're going to become. So it just kind of leaves, those few big plays here and there where teams will rip off a long touchdown or a big gain and just really get some momentum. It just really hurts us in the long run because our offense just has to play that much harder. They have to score more points. You really want to be able to just kind of run the ball and just kind of run out the clock. But the way things have been, our offense just has to try to score as often as possible in order to just stay ahead in games, because it just goes to show throughout this entire season and even in last season. I mean, you can go down 20 some points and still make that comeback. Who was it? The Jags did it the week before. First round of playoffs against the Chargers. I mean, just you can't count anybody out. So when your defense is just letting big plays like that happen and letting the offense just kind of have their way per se, it really doesn't bode well for the game script. We need those guys to really step up and be consistent in this game, and bring it every drive. So we'll just kind of go. We'll see. I think it's going to be a high scoring game. It'll be close. We'll have to see. We'll just have to see. I think the Chiefs definitely have enough firepower to kind of pick up a little bit of the slack if Patrick Mahomes isn't entirely 100%. And Andy Reid's just kind of crafty like that with his play calling. He didn't even hardly need Patrick Mahomes for 195 passing yards last week. I think that was the lowest of his season this year. So
Yeah.
he knows how to pull off the wins. We just got to convert with those plays. So we'll see how it goes. I think the Bengals do have a pretty stout defense, but they've kind of had some guys banged up. I'm not sure if they do have many injuries this week, but I think they are exploitable. So with the Chiefs offense, I think so far this year, it's just kind of been what they make of it. We kind of beat ourselves on offense. If we don't convert, it's more or less just kind of bad plays and drop passes, just silly mistakes. So
No, definitely. Yeah.
it'd be a good game.
No, I'm really looking forward to this one. It definitely would be a better game, of course, if Patrick Mahomes is 100% healthy. Which, I mean, with the little clips and things we saw him like walking off the podium at the presser, and then like a little bit of jogging and stuff at practice. He really looks okay. He really wasn't, from what I could tell, he wasn't really stepping on it too like uh gingerly or too extra cautiously or anything. Seemed to be pretty
Mm-hmm.
fluid and stuff. I mean, still got a few days to really put the pedal to the metal, if you will. So that's definitely encouraging. And with the movement in like the betting lines and things, I think Vegas feels the same. Couple things I wanted to touch on in that Jaguars game was the big Christian Kirk drop, which very likely could have set up a Jacksonville touchdown, so that kept the game a little bit closer there. And then obviously the insanely clutch 98-yard touchdown drive led by Chad Henne in Patrick Mahomes' absence was unbelievable. A lot of credit goes to Isaiah Pacheco, as you mentioned on that drive. I believe he had a pretty big chunk gain there. And then Patrick Mahomes, just in general, he is just one of the toughest guys in the NFL. There's been a lot of games where he's come up limping, kind of walking funky, and he stays out there. It was in the Super
Oh yeah.
Bowl, the one they won a couple years ago. It seemed like he would have to sit out for a while, but he just stayed in there. So no one is questioning his toughness here, but it would be really nice to get through this week, give the extra week there just to
Mm-hmm.
rest the ankle up. Because even if he's at like maybe like 85%, just that extra time is really going to be critical to be fresh for the Super Bowl if they get there. And I was also thinking like the disappointing season that the defense has had that the defense has had for Kansas City. One of the weaknesses in the Bengals right now is their offensive line. A lot of injuries there. Maybe some of those guys will be back, but the fact remains that is a weakness to expose. But one way you can kind of cover the flaws of your defense is to really extend your drives, running the
Mm-hmm.
ball, like you said, and converting those like third downs and things. So that sort of offensive stain on the field is keeping Joe Burrow off the field, right? So
Yeah.
I think that would be a pretty critical aspect of their success for this week against the Bengals. But just obviously always comes down to execution and limiting turnovers and just kind of boneheaded plays there. So yeah, it'd be very interesting. Also, just seeing what the team does with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Obviously, he wasn't activated for this game against the Jaguars. Perhaps they'll activate him for the Super Bowl if they get there. So definitely something to keep an eye on for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I think, in my opinion, I think if they want to get rid of Edwards-Helaire, if a team's willing to take a chance on him, deal him. And in my opinion, yes, you spent high, you spent that first round draft pick on him, and he really kind of disappointed. He didn't do anything of what we wanted. He showed flashes, but he didn't exactly show us any kind of consistency, anything we could
Right.
rely on. But I think the discount that they got on Isaiah Pacheco might more than make up for maybe the loss on that first round draft pick. So in my opinion, it's kind of a wash if they were to just kind of get him for his current value, because Pacheco's really come out and been the exact opposite. Something we never really would have expected coming from somebody. I forget where it was, even like a sixth round, or was he third? I
I think it
couldn't
was
remember.
seventh round pick.
Seventh
Um,
round. It was okay. Even later
Yeah, it
than
was
I
definitely
thought.
day 3. It was definitely late, but he definitely caught an eye at the combine with his speed and everything
Yep.
else, or his pro day. I'm it's all mush now.
It
It's
was the
it's
combine. I actually wrote an article and
yeah.
had him in it because he had the fastest 40 time of any running back at the combine. So
There you
that
go.
was
There you go.
exciting to see him kind of bloom into the guy he's become.
That's right. Yeah. So, do you have a score prediction? You did mention you think it'll be high scoring. What would you say would be the final score of this game?
I think it's going to be a great game, but I don't think it's going to end up being like a 1-pointer. I kind of feel like it's just going to end up being maybe like a 3 to 4 point game. It might come down to a field goal, whether or not, that happens, or a field goal throughout the game. It might be just, I'm thinking maybe like a 35-32 ball game. If we
Okay. All
can,
right.
I mean, it's gonna be something. I'm not sure.
And with the Chiefs
I
winning, obviously, right?
I would hope so. I think honestly, probably either way. Whoever, I think the score could be either way. If the Bengals win, it's going to be probably by about 3 or 4 points. If the Chiefs are going to win, I think it's going to be right around that low mid 30s, probably, or late, high 20s.
Gotcha. And I appreciate your thoughts. Yeah, so we'll bring Jason back to talk about some Eagles here. So, Jason, obviously, fun game against the Giants, right?
Right.
Uh, if you could set this off and give us your reaction to I'll call it a victory for now, but I want to hear your take on what happened there last Saturday.
So I would say, other than the obvious elation of beating up on a divisional opponent in a divisional
Yep.
playoff game, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I was a bit shocked and surprised because of the way that they kind of stumbled down the stretch, and with the injuries to Jalen Hurts, and then the let's bring them back for that last game, but they played against the Giants backups, and it was kind of like a ugly game plan, and that game
Yeah.
was completely ugly. And I'm thinking, now they had a bye, and I don't know what to expect. Are they going to be rusty? but they showed no signs of rust, and they looked immaculately prepared for that game. So that was a really pleasant surprise.
It's very interesting. I'm normally one to not say a word, like texting buddies, texting friends of the other team. If like, we'll watch an actual football
Mm-hmm.
game, or even like with our fantasy football matchups. But like at halftime, I tweeted like the Eagles just literally had a perfect half of football. Like just like recognizing just how like amazing it was. And at the end, I'm
Yep.
like, well, just keep it up. You know what I mean? But it
Yeah.
was like, man, I just had to like take a second to just like recognize like that was just unbelievable what we just saw. And again, I'm just like thinking about the Chargers and Jaguars game, like just don't blow
Right.
it now,
I had
but
those thoughts
my
too.
word.
It's funny because you know they won 14 games this season, and I would say of those 14 wins, maybe like 2 of them were like comfortable or blowouts. I feel like the rest of them you kind of had to sweat to like the final. And my dad, who raised me to be an Eagles fan, he and I would talk after the games, and I'd say to him, this is like the most nerve-wracking 14 win season I've ever I could ever have imagined, because like you never
Yeah,
felt comfortable. And so it's funny, ironic, I guess I would say, that in a playoff game they've made one where you were like, okay, by halftime I'm feeling pretty good about our prospects in this one. This is looking pretty good. Um
also very ironic that the 38-7 score landed exactly on the same date from the
100%.
NFC Championship game against the Vikings. It
Yep.
is now officially 38-7 day in the
Yeah.
Philadelphia area.
Yeah, that
Um,
was kind of kismet too. Yeah.
that's
I
right. Crazy.
I can run down like I have some like keys, but I think were keys to that game if
Oh
you'd
yeah,
like.
that'd be great. That'd be
Um
beautiful.
the first key I thought was the rushing offense in that game. I mean, they ended up with 268 on the ground. They had 4 players over 30 yards. I mean, Boston Scott got into the end zone again, which he routinely does now against the Giants. I have to think Sirianni is just trolling the Giants at this point,
Yeah,
because they get down to the goal line and in comes Boston Scott, and it's like everybody in the stadium knows exactly what's happening here, and in he goes for the touchdown.
that's
But
right.
it's just I've never seen anything like it before, for like a reserve player to just
Right.
be that aimed at one franchise. I wouldn't be shocked if they sign him in the offseason up there just to keep him away from their end zone. But in addition to the comical nature of Boston Scott, I mean, if when you look at that film, their offensive line just dominated that game. I mean, they have a reputation for one of the best offensive lines in football, and they didn't always show it. They were banged up at times this year, but I'm telling you, from the opening start of that game, they mauled the Giants. I mean, they went after them with a vengeance. And I think the best example was, I mean, and this is the kind of thing that's not going to get a lot of attention, but they had a 28-7 lead in the fourth quarter with 13-12 left, and they got the ball at their own 18-yard line. They proceeded to go on a 7-minute and 52-second drive with 11 rushing attempts, and then they got a field goal that put them up 31-7. And there was only 5 minutes left in the clock, and they basically said to the Giants, "This is over now." I mean, if it wasn't already over at 28-7, they
Right.
basically ate up half of the fourth quarter and just went right down their throat all the way down the field and put it up to a 4-score lead. And I mean, that's kind of stuff that's not going to be on Sports Center. That's not going to lead anybody's highlight film of. But that's what wins games. I mean, that's what the truly great teams do when they've got a game in hand like that. Then they just mash it down the field and they take up all the clock and they leave the opposition no choice. And that's basically what they did. They said, "Our ball, we're taking this thing down the field," and they did it. So that was obviously one of the biggest keys, was the rushing offense. I would say the second key was the pass rush. Um, they got off to a huge lead. They got off to a 2 touchdown lead, like from before you blinked, and I think that really sealed the Giants' fate, because they're Brian Dable's done a great job up there, but he's really
Oh
limited
yeah.
in their weaponry. I mean, they don't have a lot of flash. Um, they really relied on Saquon Barkley a lot this year. He was their main, star player, and Daniel Jones showed some mobility, and he gave them a dimension to it. But they're rushing, and when you're down by 14 before you can catch your breath, now you got to switch to a passing offense, and that's where the Eagles thrive. Their defensive line pins their ears back. They get after the quarterback. Hassan Reddick was in Daniel Jones' kitchen all night, and it was like he made his life miserable in that game.
Oh yeah.
And that was because they got that huge lead early, and then the pass rush could just go to town. So I mean, that was obviously critical. And then the last thing I would just say was the coaching. I mean, as I just said, Brian Dable gets all the accolades, and they're deserved up there because of what he's done with what he's got. But I think Nick Sirianni, in a way, probably took that personally and said, "Hey, all the attention's on this guy up there. I'm going to show him what I can do from a coaching standpoint." And he had a very masterful game plan. I mean, he coached like there was no tomorrow. He wasn't saving anything for the NFC Championship or the Super Bowl. He was coaching like that was the last game of the season. I mean, I have a couple examples when they went up 27-0, and he trots out a 2-point attempt to go for two, where he's trying to draw the Giants offside so they could get to the one and then do a
Yep.
quarterback sneak, which they've run with a 90% success rate this year. And it didn't work, but just the fact that he's thinking, okay, I'm not going to settle for this extra point when it's 27-0. I want 29-0.
That's
I
right.
mean, he wasn't taking anything for granted. He wasn't taking his foot off the gas, and that was, to me, very reminiscent of Doug Peterson, the way he coached in their championship run. I mean, he was aggressive all the way to the Super Bowl and the Philly special and all that stuff. And I think that's really what you have to be in today's NFL if you want to win a championship. You can't be conservative or content with, oh, well, we have a 4-touchdown lead. Let's just pack it in now. I mean, I'm sure he watched that Jaguars game where they were down 27-0, and he said, nope, that's not enough. I want as many points as I can get. So just to do that and just to be showing that kind of stuff on film for the 49ers to think about now this week, because they've got to now scheme like, well, what if they come out and do that to us? And that's eating up practice time, precious practice time that they have to go over. What happens if they run that weird fake punt where a safety is going to take the snap and they're trying to draw us off sides? You got to be prepared because they showed that to you for a reason. Maybe they'll actually execute that in a game. So, I mean, coaching is, everybody just goes, oh, they won, so that was great coaching. But like, it really got down to a finer detail for me. And just to see the approach that he took, I think was really impressive and probably a good sign for what's to come.
Absolutely. Yeah, so now we have a very tough test, obviously, with the San Francisco 49ers.
No doubt.
I think the Eagles and the 49ers are they may be the only two teams that are top 5 in total defense and offense.
Mhm.
Maybe there's another team in there, I forget. So it's as close of a matchup really as it comes, like
Yep.
statistically speaking overall. So going into this matchup against the 49ers, obviously a really tough defense, really good offensive weapons. What would you say you'd be the most confident in on the Eagles side? And what would you be the least confident in going up against the 49ers?
Well, obviously it's a fascinating matchup as far as I'm concerned. I mean, the 49ers, you can't take anything away from the season that they've had, especially now
Yep.
being on their third quarterback and executing the way that they have. I have done a couple of things I think that are going to be key for the Eagles. I think the rushing offense is going to be key. Obviously, I just went through how they really imposed their will on the Giants from a rushing standpoint. Now, the Cowboys last week, in contrast, managed just 76 rushing yards against the 49ers total the whole game. So there's a clear discrepancy there. The Niners defend the run quite well. But I think having success in the run game is so critical because it will put the Eagles in third and manageable situations.
That's right.
And whereas if they get in 3rd and 10, 3rd and 15, and Joey Bosa's coming after you, or excuse me, Nick Bosa's coming after you, you're
Yeah,
in big trouble.
that's
I
right.
saw an interesting stat online. Shane Haff with the painted lines. He had up that Joey Bosa this season ranks 9th in pass rush win rate, but Jordan Mailata ranks 56th amongst offensive tackles in pass block win rate. So in other words, he's down. I mean, he's having a down year in that regard. And I know the 49ers know that mismatch, where Nick usually bounces from side to side. I don't think they want him anywhere near Lane Johnson. I think they're going to line him up on Mailata all game and prove that he can stop you. So if they can get to 3rd and 3, they keep him on his heels a little bit versus, coming after Jalen Hurts, excuse me. And I don't want any part of Nick Bosa, with a motivation and a clear path to the quarterback. I think that's the way to get smashed. So I would look for them in that regard. I don't know if you remember, Steve, but the first matchup that they had at home with the Cowboys this year, they ran a lot of RPO centric plays and they ran them right at Micah Parsons. And they kind of like neutralized his effect on the game because he had to make a choice. Am I going to play the running back? Am I going to play Jalen Hurts? And in that way, he was kind of like removed, and I would expect that they would probably kind of dip into that bucket or that toolbox again and just say, okay, here's how we're going to take Nick Bosa out of the game. We're going to run it right at him with these RPOs, and if he looks like he's coming for Jalen, he's going to hand it off to Miles or Boston Scott or Kenny Gainwell. And if he comes to the running back, well, Jalen just tuck it in his gut and take off, and in that way he can kind of get back on his heels and you'll take away his potency. And I think that's what I would do. I mean, I don't know if that's what they're going to do, but that's certainly what I would do, because you can take away what makes him such a special player in doing that. So obviously, like I said, the rushing offense is key for the Eagles. One thing I said about the Giants game, I think will be critical in this game as well, is a quick start.
Mm-hmm.
I think, obviously you're familiar with the crowd advantage that Philadelphia provides. And if they get lathered up pretty good and you get, up by 10 or 14 early, look out 49ers. Like, you don't want any part of that place when it's rocking and the Eagles have a 2-score lead. So, and I also think schematically, like I said earlier, the Eagles are designed to have that big lead and then send their defense after the quarterback. And if you got a rookie quarterback, I know he's played well,
Yep.
but he's in a hostile environment. He's got to pass to succeed. And now the defense is coming after him with a vengeance. That's not a recipe for success for the Niners. So I think Sirianni's probably eminently aware of that. I would expect him to be sending all kinds of crazy exotic plays early, taking deep shots, because he's looking to get some splash plays and get up big in a hurry. Because if they get into a situation where they're down big early, they could start to unravel a little bit. And then that kind of dovetails into like the third point I was going to make, which is the Eagles' run defense. So that's where I feel like the 49ers probably have an advantage on the Eagles. They're 7th in the NFL in rushing offense, whereas the Eagles have ranked 16th. Now, one of the keys to why the Eagles have ranked 16th is that their first round draft pick, Jordan Davis, missed a sizable chunk of the season to injury. But he's the reason, this is the game that he was brought here for, essentially. I mean, when they traded up over the Ravens to get him, his job is to sit in the middle of that front, eat up blockers, collapse lanes, and make it really difficult for the Niners to run. And he's got to do that in this game, because as much as I love Fletcher Cox and Javon Hargrave, they're not run stoppers. They're pass rushers that do it from the inside. And when Jordan Davis is not, doing that, and he's not on the field, I feel like the Niners are going to have a field day with McCaffrey and Elijah Mitchell running right down their throats. And that whole thing where I said they need to get up early kind of neutralizes that as well, even if Jordan Davis isn't up to the task, because now the Niners don't have that luxury of leaning on that running game because they're down and they need to catch up. So those kind of things all fit together. But I think if they can make that work to their advantage, they could win the game for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I wanted to speak for a moment on the legend here of Brock Purdy. Obviously, he's been getting the job done. There's been times throughout the season where he was unbelievably efficient, really putting up a lot of yards, touchdowns, and limiting turnovers. Throughout the playoffs, I don't think he has a turnover yet. There's a moment in the Seattle game where an interception was like this close, it just bounced off the defensive back's hands. Same thing against the Cowboys. I think it just slipped through the hands
Right.
of Diggs. So again, going to your point, if the Eagles go up big and they're able to add more pressure, like early, if they're able to get up early, and
Yep.
they're able to add pressure onto Purdy, I just think like that floodgate could definitely open up for sure. And we have
Yep.
the defensive backs to make that happen. Obviously, that's happened in a number of games this season, but yeah, it's if he really comes out and just puts on a clinic, I mean,
Yeah.
it's one of the more amazing things I've witnessed. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
And I think we have the personnel to basically neutralize that, and but did they have enough weapons around him that he could still succeed? Obviously,
Sure.
and he just didn't need to do a ton against the Cowboys to win the game.
No.
And no touchdowns. I think it was under 200 passing yards, and that's fine. You get the W. That's all you care about.
Right.
But I think again, being the rookie in the hostile environment, I think it is just a recipe for the Eagles' success. But obviously, you got to do all those things, got to execute, and you have to try
Right.
to neutralize that very scary defense that's very good at every level. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
definitely
What
going to be an exciting game for sure.
It's funny you bring up Brock Purdy too. I saw another stat today, and I wish I could remember the exact numbers. I'm gonna say something and it may not be 100% accurate, but you'll get the idea. His
Okay.
road splits as a college player, I think he was like 13-5 at home, and he
Okay.
was like 10-13 in road games as a college quarterback. So,
Okay.
and he's only played 2 games on the road since he's took over as the Niners starter. And one of them was against the Raiders, which they
Mm,
won. I don't know what the other game. I can't remember what the other game, but it was another game where it was like lopsided in terms of talent. So he hasn't really faced a very tough road challenge yet, and now he's going into probably one of the most hostile environments in football, in one of the biggest games in football.
right.
I have to think that that's a facet of this game that the Eagles coaching staff is looking to manipulate a little bit. Say, okay, this kid gets rattled when he's in a rough spot. Let's get after him. And like we already talked about, key to that is having the lead. So because if they don't have the lead or they don't have a big lead, well, then I'm sure Shanahan's going to go, you want to come after our quarterback? Well, we're going to run a bunch of screens and we're going to run a bunch of up the gut plays all the way down the field. And you just keep bringing the pressure because we'll just keep negating that with these, nickel and dime. Right. And Steve, you've seen that happen to the Eagles defense all season. They can get nickel and dime they play that coverage where they're got the soft cushion and they're giving guys 8 yards off the line. And the
Yep.
teams just take those short passing plays right down the field. And Gannon, for as much as he succeeded this year and coming runner up to the 85 Bears in terms of sack total is is not it's not nothing to be shameful of, but he does seem to kind of get stuck in these inability to react. These teams kind of do this dink and dunk down the field, and he doesn't make any changes. He just lets them keep right on doing it. And that's what keeps me up at night when I'm thinking about this game, is the vision of McCaffrey and Kittle just taking 5, 6, 7, 8 yard chunks down the field, and we're not doing anything to stop it. So we'll see, but that's potentially a huge pitfall, I think, for the Eagles, is if that's the way the Niners choose to play it and they don't react. They could find themselves down 2 scores before they blink, and then they're in the hole.
That's right. Yeah, certainly. Yeah, so it's interesting. Right now, Philadelphia is favored at negative 2.5, which I think is fair. That they obviously are at home, so you got a little extra bump there. But I think it's a pretty close matchup. If you had to offer a score prediction for this game, where do you see it falling?
Well, I mean, I'll say 2 things. If they can get that early advantage that we talked about, and if they can keep that Niner run game at bay, I can see them jumping out to a modest lead. And then what I would kind of the way I see the game playing out is they get that big lead, they get the crowd frenzied, and then they're going to kind of play chicken with the clock like they've done all
Mm,
season long. They get that big lead and then they just try to bleed the clock down. And I kind of foresee the Niners clawing back into the game, as we get closer into the fourth quarter. And I think it'll tighten up quite a bit. I do think they'll be able to withstand that rally and hold the game, but I think ultimately it'll be a close score. I'm going to say 23-20 Eagles, but I
okay.
think it might be one of those games where it's 17-3 or something at one point, and then you just watch the Niners start. Okay, touchdown. What are we doing? Why aren't we being more aggressive? Because that seems to have been the MO of the Eagles this year, is they get that big lead and then they just try to sit on it and kill the clock. And I think that's a dangerous game to play against this type of an opponent. But certainly
Yeah, no,
Sirianni didn't take
I
his foot off the gas last week, so maybe he's learned his lesson on that.
Yeah, that's right. And of course, if that is the outcome of the game, the cardiologists in the Philadelphia area are going to be busy,
Yeah,
busy, busy, busy the next couple of weeks for sure. But
yeah.
yeah, I'm really looking forward to this game. Um, just from like a pure even sort of a matchup based game. I'm just really looking forward, just trying to be neutral and unbiased as much as possible. I am just generally speaking excited for the game, but there is that little extra bit of anxiety that just comes with
Trepidation, sure.
yeah, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. But
I think, I mean, I hate to
cautiously
be biased.
optimistic.
I'm obviously biased, but I'll say I think they're the best two teams in the NFC. I mean, by any measure. So, I mean,
Yeah.
that's who should be in the NFC Championship game. So we'll see how it plays out. But I'm always like kind of a purist in that way. I like the best teams to get to these games and then have them slug it out and see. Sometimes you get these fluky things where a team like the Jags or something makes it all the way to the conference championship. And hey, I love Dougie P, but I think there's more talented teams in the AFC, and that's who I want to see in the AFC championship game. So I don't think you have that problem here. I think the Niners are and the Eagles are really equally matched. They really have beaten up on the rest of the conference this year, and we'll see who emerges. But whoever it is, I think will be an excellent representative for the conference in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think the same goes for the matchup against the Chiefs and Bengals as well. Obviously, we're looking at four of the division winners, and pretty far gap, but between uh the talent and the
Mm-hmm.
outcome of those divisions. I mean, the closest obviously was the NFC East, of course, but the teams that are in there definitely deserve to be in there. Like you said, there's not these like fluky teams or any like real big shocking
Right.
surprises. I mean, I guess arguably the Bengals and Bills game could have gone either way, but just the Bills just had no answer for the quick passing game and Joe
Yeah.
Burrow's ability to kind of go kind of work his way up the pocket and and get the ball out. And then Joe Mixon just played like an absolute bully. Like they just had
Yeah.
no answer for his rush, especially in the second half. But
I
yeah.
think when you look at Buffalo, to me, they strike me as a team that kind of is like emotionally exhausted after everything that happened with the Damar Hamlin situation. They just look like they're out of gas. Like they need to recharge. I mean, I know a lot of people that were Bills Mafia people were hoping that would be like an inspiration and would kind of spur them
Oh,
to
for
victory.
sure.
But
Yeah.
having been seen that and had that your teammate be in that predicament, I think it just was hard for them to kind of like rev the engines again and get everything moving. I mean, football's such a fluky, emotional game, and I think they just that whole thing. It sounds crass to say in terms of talking about how that affected football. Obviously, his health is the number one priority, but it just seemed like that was a deflator for the team. Like they just
Oh,
kind of wanted
I'm
to
I'm with you
rally
100%. Yeah.
and get everybody healthy and get home and be safe. And I think that really just kind of derailed their chances this season.
And it was interesting because like a lot of us were just very curious to see, how that Bills and Bengals game from Monday Night Football would play out. We were all kind of curious about that, but the Bengals left right, or they started right where they left off. They just
Mm-hmm.
marched right down the field, scored on the very first drive, just like the
Yep.
other one. And the Bills, were able to move the ball a bit, but they just really looked, you know, ready for that kind of moment, and I
Yeah.
think I think the Bengals have a very interesting chip on their shoulder because of the whole like coin toss thing and the neutral game site and
Oh
everything
yeah.
else. But I mean, the game's going to be in its rightful place there in Kansas City, obviously, but
Right.
still,
And
it's been a
I didn't watch that Bills Bengals game with really any rooting interest, just as a fan to want to see a good game. But
that's right.
as it turned out, I'm really kind of pleased that the Bengals won, just so that, as you said, that game deserves to be at Arrowhead. I don't think none of those fan bases deserve to have to go to Atlanta or wherever the neutral site would have been. And I saw an interesting thing online, which I hadn't even considered the other day, but somebody was talking about we should be grateful that happened because were that neutral site scenario to have played out this year, there's speculation that the NFL would then look to expand that or to get sponsorship and start to have neutral sites for the championship games every year. And it's like, no, I'm sorry, if you've earned your way to home field advantage, you deserve to have that game in front of your home fans in your home stadium. I don't want to be playing the NFC Championship game in some random stadium somewhere where for this year, for our Eagles fans to have to go to Seattle or California or something to see the Eagles play in the NFC Championship. That's not right. So in that way, in a selfish, I guess, kind of way, I'm kind of glad that it played out that the Bengals made it and that neutral site didn't come into play at all.
No, certainly. I can definitely visualize a scenario where Goodell would just be drooling at the thought of,
Uh-huh.
oh, look, who could we get in to,
Yeah.
host these games, and who I could just see it now. It's one of
Right.
those things. But
The
no, so I'm with you.
it's going to be like NASCAR, the Doritos Coca-Cola NFC Championship game.
That's right.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
I don't need that. Like, let's just forget that right away.
certainly, certainly.
Yeah.
Oh man. All right, guys. This was a great show. I think we nailed it as far as expectations and what to look out for in these matchups. So before we get out of here, just want you to reintroduce where people can find you and your content, and then that'll be that. So we'll start with you, Axton.
Yeah, you guys can find me again on Twitter. My handle is right below my face here at Harding_3. Then also you can find me on idpguys.org, articles, video content, and things like that. Michael and I did the waiver wire show this year each week for offense and IDP over on our YouTube channel. And I think that's also featured elsewhere. I couldn't say specifically off the top of my head, but that's pretty well where you find me. We also have I think you mentioned earlier, the Discord chat for our subscribers. I'm usually in there a little bit more, just helping people talk through their teams and trades and all sorts of things. So if you have any interest, go ahead and hop on board and subscribe yourself. And there's a lot of good guys in here to talk through points and teams and advice and all sorts of things in here, even some just fun chatty channels. So that's where you find me.
That's right. That's right. Excellent. All right, Jason.
Much like Axon, you can find me at my Twitter handle, which is also below my face. Um, I I will share all of my content through my Twitter handle, so that's probably the easiest way to find all my information. I do write. I'm the senior writer for Dynasty Nerds. As I said, I'll have some rookie profile content coming out shortly. We also have a Discord channel at Dynasty Nerds, of which I'm a part. And if you'd like to contact me through that, I'd be happy to help you out there. I also interlope into the IDP guys Discord channel because I've done some collaboration with your fine organization, so you can find me in there periodically. So I'm not hard to find. You just kind of come see me, and I'll be happy to chat ball anytime.
Yeah, I can confidently say that both these guys are highly accessible, very easygoing, very easy to talk to, and very competitive and smart fantasy football minds. So, if I didn't feel that way, I wouldn't have had him on the show. Beside just being pleasant to speak with and interact with. So, yeah. Uh, Please, everyone, follow Jason and follow Axton and get your eyes on their content. But until next time, good luck to everyone's teams, especially the Chiefs and of course the Eagles here. We'll forget about the other guys until tomorrow night. But yep. So enjoy the football. Good luck and keep climbing.